In 2007, a 7-year-old girl disappeared on a quiet street just minutes from home. No one heard her scream, no one saw a struggle, no one found a body. The town searched for days. The police searched for months. Her mother searched for 19 years. And in all that time, the case remained unsolved. Until one night, while watching an old family video, her mother heard a sentence no one had paid attention to before, a sentence spoken by a child, a sentence buried under background laughter, a sentence that sounded like nonsense, but that sentence led investigators to a hidden place, an overlooked man, and a truth so shocking it changed everything. Because 19 years after she vanished, the little girl came home. This is the story of Emily Dawson, the girl who disappeared in 2007 and the one forgotten sentence that brought her back. The morning of June 14, 2007 did not feel unusual. That is what made it so cruel. The sky over Briar Glen was bright and clean, the kind of soft summer morning that made even ordinary life feel gentle. The birds were loud, the streets were quiet. Sprinklers clicked across green lawns. A delivery truck rolled slowly past 2 blocks over. Somewhere nearby, someone was mowing grass. Inside a modest white house on Maple Lane, Rachel Dawson stood at the stove making pancakes. Her daughter, Emily, was 7 years old, all curls and questions and restless energy. She had the kind of face people remembered instantly, bright eyes, a quick smile, and that innocent seriousness children sometimes have when they are trying to understand a world much bigger than themselves. Emily had a routine every morning. She never wanted regular pancakes. She wanted them shaped like hearts. And she always said the same thing: extra syrup, no blueberries. Rachel used to tease her. "One day you'll grow up and discover blueberries are wonderful." Emily always answered with complete certainty, "Not today." That morning, she shuffled into the kitchen, still wearing strawberry print pajamas and dragging one sock halfway off her heel. She climbed into her chair and watched her mother flip the pancake. "Heart shape," Emily reminded her. "I know." Emily sat quietly for a while, unusually quiet. Rachel noticed it, but only in passing. Children moved in moods. Sometimes they talked nonstop. Sometimes they drifted into their own little thoughts. Rachel set the plate down in front of her. "There you go." Emily looked out the back window for a moment, as though she were thinking about something she wasn't sure how to say. Then she said it. Not dramatically, not fearfully, just casually. "Mommy, the man with the moon tattoo said I'm almost big enough now." Rachel turned from the sink. "The what?" Emily kept staring at the syrup sliding across her pancake. "The man with the moon tattoo." Rachel felt that first strange stir of concern, the quiet kind, not yet panic, but enough to make the room feel different. "What man, sweetheart?" Emily shrugged. "The one who talks like he knows Grandma." Rachel put down the dish towel slowly. "What do you mean he knows Grandma?" "He said he used to help her with things." "Where did you see him?" Emily pointed vaguely toward the back of the house. "By the fence, sometimes, after school." That was enough to send a pulse of fear through Rachel's chest. She crouched beside the table. "Emily, has this man ever touched you?" Emily looked confused. "No." "Did he ever ask you to go anywhere?" "No." "Did he give you anything?" Emily thought for a second. "Gum, once." Rachel's expression changed immediately. "Emily, listen to me carefully. If anyone talks to you, you must tell me right away. Do you understand?" Emily nodded, though she seemed more puzzled than afraid. Rachel tried to keep her voice calm. "What did he look like?" Emily lifted one shoulder. "He had a moon on his hand and boots, and he said not to tell yet because he wanted it to be a surprise." That sentence landed like ice. Rachel opened her mouth to ask more, But just then, the school bus came into view at the end of the street, and life, as it often does, rushed forward too fast. Backpack, hairbrush, lunchbox, shoes, a quick wipe of syrup from Emily's chin, a final kiss on the forehead. Rachel walked her to the curb. "Straight home after school," she said. Emily smiled. "Okay." Then she climbed onto the bus. Rachel waved until it turned the corner. She would replay that wave for the rest of her life. When Rachel told investigators about the breakfast conversation, it instantly became central to the case. The man with the moon tattoo. He talks like he knows Grandma. He wanted it to be a surprise. Police built entire lead trees around those phrases. Who in the county had a moon tattoo? Who had access to children? Who knew Margaret Bell, Emily's grandmother? Margaret, devastated and trembling, sat through long interviews trying to remember every handyman, every church contact, every neighbor, every repair worker who had ever passed through her orbit. There were names, too many names, but none clearly fit. The moon tattoo lead was frustrating. A tattoo can seem specific until you start looking. Crescent moons, full moons, abstract symbols, partial designs. There were enough possibilities to muddy everything. Then came a witness statement from a teenage boy named Darren Pike. He told officers he had seen a tan, wagon-like vehicle idling near the alley around the time Emily disappeared. He thought it looked out of place, but he hadn't seen a plate and he couldn't identify the driver. In 2007, that kind of lead was fragile. No home security footage, no neighborhood camera networks, no digital trail, just memory. And memory is a poor witness under pressure. The case intensified for weeks. Search parties widened. Nearby counties were alerted. Registered offenders were questioned. Tips flooded in, most of them useless, many of them cruel. Some people said they'd seen Emily in a mall. Some claimed she'd been taken across state lines. Others insisted it had to be someone close to the family. That last theory cut the deepest. There is a special kind of suffering in being looked at as both victim and suspect. Rachel felt it in silences, in sideways glances, in the tone of people asking questions they already half believed answered. Months passed, then a year. The case did not officially close, it just cooled, which is another way of saying the world slowly resumed turning while one family remained frozen in the moment everything broke.
There are griefs that arrive like storms, and there are griefs that move into the house and stay. Rachel's grief stayed. She kept Emily's room exactly as it was. The pink curtains still hung at the window. The stuffed rabbit with one loose ear still sat on the bed. The coloring book on the floor remained open to the half-colored castle page. Every year on Emily's birthday, Rachel made a cake. Every Christmas, she wrapped one gift and set it beneath the tree. Every June 14th, she left the porch light on all night. Neighbors called her strong. Some called her broken. Some eventually stopped calling at all. Time is uncomfortable around unresolved sorrow. Most people do not know how to remain close to someone whose pain refuses to become tidier. Rachel worked at the local library. She moved carefully through life, speaking softly, doing her work, thanking people for ordinary things. But inside, she was never not searching. She kept binders, newspaper clippings, maps, tip logs, photos, handwritten theories, old interview summaries, printouts from forums, lists of names she refused to forget. If a traveling offender was arrested in another state, she checked. If unidentified remains were reported, she checked. If some woman online shared a story of childhood memory gaps, Rachel checked. Hope became less an emotion and more a discipline.
And among all the details, one line haunted her endlessly. "I'm almost big enough now." Big enough for what? Why would a grown man say that? Was it crooning language? A plan delayed? Had Emily misunderstood? Rachel did not know, but she circled those words in her notebook so many times the paper tore. Then, years later, retired detective Tom Hargrove visited her before leaving the force. He brought copies of case files he was allowed to share. He sat at her kitchen table and said quietly, "I don't think we missed something obvious. I think we missed something small." Rachel stared at him. "What small thing?" He shook his head. "That's what keeps me up." After he left, Rachel wrote those words on a sticky note and placed it on the first binder. "We missed something small." She had no idea how right he was.
In the spring of 2026, Rachel was sorting through storage boxes in the attic. It was not a dramatic moment. No thunder, no sudden insight, just dust, old plastic bins, and the quiet fatigue of a woman deciding whether to keep objects that hurt to touch. At the bottom of one container were mini DV tapes and old camcorder cassettes from the early 2000s. Birthdays, holidays, random family afternoons. Rachel almost set them aside. Instead, she borrowed an old digitizer from the library and began converting them at night. The footage was painful. Emily blowing out candles. Emily dancing badly in the living room. Emily in rain boots jumping through puddles. Emily mispronouncing words in that bright, serious way little children do. Then she reached a tape labeled Thanksgiving 2006, Mom's House, 7 months before Emily vanished. Rachel let it play. The camera shook, voices overlapped, plates clinked, someone laughed too loudly. Her late husband Daniel was probably filming. The footage drifted through the crowded living room where cousins played and adults argued warmly about food. Then the lens landed briefly on Emily, sitting cross-legged on the carpet with a doll in her lap. Someone off camera, Rachel later identified the voice as her brother Nate, asked jokingly, "Em, who's your secret friend you keep talking about?" Emily giggled. Then, while half focused on the doll, she said, "The train man says when the bell rings twice, I can go where lost girls live." The room in the video kept moving. Someone laughed at another conversation. No one reacted. It was swallowed instantly by family noise. But Rachel went still. She rewound it, played it again, then again. Her skin prickled, because in 19 years she had never heard those words before, not remembered them, not reported them, not seen them in any transcript, not heard anyone mention them. A child's sentence, buried in holiday noise, had survived by accident, and it changed everything.
Rachel drove to Tom Hargrove's house at sunrise. She played him the clip in silence. He listened once, then asked her to replay it. By the third time, his face had changed completely. "The train man," he said quietly. Briar Glen had one old train landmark everyone local knew about, a disused freight spur along the industrial edge of town. Near mile marker 18 sat an abandoned signal structure known informally as the Bell House. Years earlier, before the line had mostly shut down, the crossing there used a warning system that rang in a distinctive double tone before the barrier arm dropped. The bell rings twice. Hargrove looked at Rachel. "If a guy wanted to make a place sound magical to a child," he said, "that's exactly how he'd describe it." The cold case unit was contacted immediately. At first, younger investigators were cautious. It sounded thin. One recovered phrase from an old family tape, 19 years after the fact? But Hargrove's reputation still carried weight, and Rachel's urgency was impossible to ignore. A team agreed to review the rail corridor. The Bell House was almost hidden by then, graffiti-stained, partially collapsed, swallowed by weeds and time. But in 2007, it would have been more intact, more useful, more concealed. Cadaver dogs were brought in first. Rachel waited in her car at a distance, barely breathing. She expected the worst. After 19 years, hope and dread begin to resemble each other. but the dogs did not indicate human remains. They alerted repeatedly inside the structure to old biological traces. Under a warped metal floor panel in one corner, investigators found a concealed crawl space. Inside were degraded blanket fibers, wrappers from candy brands sold in the mid-2000s, and a small rusted barrette. Then they found the plastic bag. Inside were 3 old Polaroids. The first showed the interior of the Bell House. The second showed a child's crayon drawing taped to a wall, and the third showed a little girl with curly hair wearing a purple backpack. Emily. Alive. Rachel collapsed when they told her. For 19 years she had lived between 2 unbearable possibilities, that Emily had died the first day, or that she had lived and suffered somewhere unknown. Now one truth was clear. Emily had survived the abduction. The Bell House had been a holding place, not the end, which means someone had a plan, someone familiar with the area, someone comfortable enough to use that place, someone overlooked.
Investigators turned to rail line records from 2006 and 2007. Maintenance crews, contract workers, signal technicians, right-of-way inspectors, security. One name began surfacing repeatedly: Calvin Mercer. At the time of Emily's disappearance, Mercer was 41 and worked contract maintenance around signaling infrastructure, including the old Bell House corridor. He drove a tan utility wagon, and in one employee badge photo, his left hand was visible. Near the thumb webbing was a faded crescent moon tattoo. Rachel stared at the image in shock. There it was, the moon tattoo. Not rumor, not theory, real. The deeper investigators dug, the more terrifying the picture became. Mercer had once done small repair work for several elderly residents in the county. One of them was Margaret Bell, Emily's grandmother. Fence patching, gutter cleanup, odd jobs. He did, in fact, talk like he knew Grandma. The child had told the truth from the very beginning, every piece of it. And adults, not because they didn't care, but because they failed to connect it, had missed what she was trying to say. Worse still, Mercer had barely been examined in 2007. His name had appeared in a broad contractor list, but an administrative mismatch logged his vehicle differently than the witness described, and with no criminal record, he slipped through the cracks. One overlooked file entry, one missed priority, one lost child. By 2026, Mercer had moved multiple times: Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, finally, Arkansas. He had never built a stable public life: cash labor, contract repair, salvage work, quiet disappearances and reappearances. A man who knew how to stay unremarkable. Then investigators saw the second name linked to his current property: a 26-year-old woman, Elena Mercer. No consistent birth trail, no clean hospital record, no solid early childhood documentation. Everything about her identity looked late-built, artificial, possible. Rachel felt hope and terror collide so hard she could barely stand. Authorities moved carefully. Cases involving children abducted young and raised under false identities are psychologically dangerous. The victim may not know she is a victim, or may know only in fractured ways she cannot trust. Trauma bonding, dependency, fear of authorities, identity confusion, all of it had to be considered. Mercer's property in rural Arkansas was placed under surveillance. The man, now older, appeared deeply controlling and isolated. The young woman, Elena, left only occasionally. A feed store, a post office run, once a pharmacy. Always nervous, always quick to return. She looked like someone living inside invisible walls. Agents needed proof before taking the next step. Investigators turned to rail line records from 2006 and 2007. Maintenance crews, contract workers, signal technicians, right-of-way inspectors, security. One name began surfacing repeatedly: Calvin Mercer. At the time of Emily's disappearance, Mercer was 41 and worked contract maintenance around signaling infrastructure, including the old Bell House corridor. He drove a tan utility wagon, and in one employee badge photo, his left hand was visible. Near the thumb webbing was a faded crescent moon tattoo. Rachel stared at the image in shock. There it was, the moon tattoo. Not rumor, not theory, real. The deeper investigators dug, the more terrifying the picture became. Mercer had once done small repair work for several elderly residents in the county. One of them was Margaret Bell, Emily's grandmother. Fence patching, gutter cleanup, odd jobs. He did, in fact, talk like he knew Grandma. The child had told the truth from the very beginning, every piece of it. And adults, not because they didn't care, but because they failed to connect it, had missed what she was trying to say. Worse still, Mercer had barely been examined in 2007. His name had appeared in a broad contractor list, but an administrative mismatch logged his vehicle differently than the witness described, and with no criminal record, he slipped through the cracks. One overlooked file entry, one missed priority, one lost child. By 2026, Mercer had moved multiple times: Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, finally Arkansas. He had never built a stable public life: cash labor, contract repair, salvage work, quiet disappearances and reappearances. A man who knew how to stay unremarkable. Then investigators saw the second name linked to his current property: a 26-year-old woman, Elena Mercer. No consistent birth trail, no clean hospital record, no solid early childhood documentation. Everything about her identity looked late-built, artificial, possible. Rachel felt hope and terror collide so hard she could barely stand. Authorities moved carefully. Cases involving children abducted young and raised under false identities are psychologically dangerous. The victim may not know she is a victim, or may know only in fractured ways she cannot trust. Trauma bonding, dependency, fear of authorities, identity confusion, all of it had to be considered. Mercer's property in rural Arkansas was placed under surveillance. The man, now older, appeared deeply controlling and isolated. The young woman, Elena, left only occasionally. A feed store, a post office run, once a pharmacy, always nervous, always quick to return. She looked like someone living inside invisible walls. Agents needed proof before taking the next step.
One afternoon, Elena discarded a coffee cup behind the feed store. The cup was retrieved. DNA was tested against Rachel's sample. Those 4 days of waiting nearly destroyed her. She couldn't eat, couldn't sit still, couldn't pray in full sentences. When the call finally came, Rachel answered with shaking hands. The analyst on the line spoke carefully. There is a 99.9987% probability of a biological mother-daughter match. Rachel sat down on the floor where she stood. Elena Mercer was Emily Dawson, alive. 19 years after vanishing, alive. No one in Briar Glen forgot where they were when that news began to leak. The impossible had happened. But rescue, they knew, would not be simple. The FBI designed the operation with unusual care. They could not risk Mercer panicking, fleeing, or hurting her. They also could not assume Emily, now a grown woman shaped by 19 years of coercion, would immediately welcome them. Mercer was lured away from the property using a staged salvage deal. Once off-site, officers intercepted and detained him. At the same time, a victim recovery team approached the house. Emily opened the door. She stood there in silence, taking in the badges, the posture, the seriousness in their eyes. One of the agents, Claire, spoke first. "You're not in trouble." Emily's response was immediate and heartbreaking. "Did he say I did something wrong?" That told them almost everything they needed to know. Claire kept her voice soft. "No, you didn't do anything wrong." A pause. "Is your name Elena Mercer?" Emily hesitated. "That's what he calls me." Claire inhaled slowly. "What if I told you that before that, you had another name?" Emily's expression changed in a way no one in the room would later forget. It was not recognized exactly, not yet. It was more like the sudden fear of standing at the edge of a truth too large to enter. She whispered, "Sometimes I dream someone's calling me from a porch." Claire nodded. "Yes," she said, "that's your mother." Emily's knees nearly gave out. Rachel was brought to a secure victim services center. She waited in a private room, clutching Emily's broken butterfly clip in her palm. She was terrified, not of seeing her daughter, of not being known by her. 19 years changes everything. Faces age, voices deepen, memory distorts, trauma erases in self-defense.
A counselor told Rachel gently, "Let her come to you at her own pace." Then the door opened. A woman stepped inside. 26 years old, thin, trembling, curly-haired, guarded, beautiful in that fragile, stunned way survivors sometimes are when the world has cracked open under them. Rachel stood. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Rachel whispered, "Emily?" The woman's eyes filled instantly. "I don't know if that's me," she said. Rachel took one step forward. "When you were little, you hated blueberries and pancakes. You slept with a rabbit named Clover after its ear fell off, and when you were nervous, you rubbed this." She opened her hand, the yellow butterfly clip. Something broke open in the young woman's face. A memory, a sensation, a buried self. Her hand flew to her mouth, and then she cried the word she hadn't spoken since childhood. "Mommy." Rachel reached her. They collapsed into each other, sobbing. 19 years of grief met 19 years of captivity in a single embrace. No camera recorded it. No public image exists. Only witness descriptions of two people holding each other like life itself had been returned. Over the following weeks, Emily began piecing together fragments of memory. Not in neat sequence. Trauma never arrives neatly. She remembered the alley. She remembered Mercer crouching low, using her grandmother's name, telling her he had a surprise and that her mother knew. She remembered the bell house. A blanket. Candy. The distant ring of metal and warning bells. The strange story he told her about lost girls living somewhere safe.
Then the moves began. New places, new names, new rules. Mercer told her that her mother had abandoned her, told her police were dangerous, told her that if she ever spoke to strangers, she would be taken somewhere terrible. He isolated her, controlled her education, rationed affection, punished curiosity, and created a world in which he was the only source of safety. Over time, the original child self did what many children in prolonged captivity do. It buried itself to survive. But not completely, because pieces remained. A porch light, a voice calling, a syrupy pancake, a broken yellow clip, a feeling that life had started before this one. Those fragments, held somewhere below language, kept her from fully disappearing inside the false identity he built. The case exploded across the country. Headlines called it miraculous. Some called it the cold case resurrection. Others focused on the home video clue that cracked everything open. Calvin Mercer was charged with kidnapping, identity fraud, document falsification, unlawful restraint, and additional crimes available under the jurisdictions involved. The defense tried to challenge memory, timeline, and evidence continuity, but the prosecution had layers. The Polaroid, the moon tattoo, the grandmother connection, the forged identity trail, the DNA match, the Bell House evidence, Mercer's own contradictory explanations. At one point under questioning, Mercer said, "I saved her." That statement destroyed any illusion of benevolence. People do not save children by erasing their names. Rachel testified. So did retired Detective Hargrove, who admitted with visible emotion that the child had been trying to tell them the truth all along. And when Emily chose to speak, the courtroom went silent. She looked at Mercer and said, "You stole my first life, then taught me to be grateful for what you left of it." The jury returned guilty verdicts in less than 4 hours. Rachel wept. Emily stood still, almost disbelieving. Later, outside the courthouse, she stepped into the sunlight and said very softly, "I think I'm learning what free feels like." People imagine reunions as endings. In truth, they are beginnings. Rachel had not gotten back her 7-year-old daughter. She had gotten back a 26-year-old woman carrying decades of survival. That required a different kind of love. Gentle love, patient love, love without possession. Emily had to learn choice, what clothes she liked, what food she preferred, how long she wanted to stay in a store, what music felt like hers, how to answer questions without fearing the consequences.
She froze the first time Rachel asked, "What would you like for dinner?" No one had asked her that in a meaningful way before. At the grocery store, she stood motionless in front of the cereal aisle because there were too many options. At night, she sometimes checked windows and doors 3 times. She startled at raised voices, apologized constantly,
asked permission for things no adult should have to ask permission for. Rachel had her own learning to do. She had to stop herself from over-explaining, from filling silence with reassurance, from trying to repair 19 years in a single week. Some days were beautiful. Some were devastating. But healing came in moments. The first laugh over something silly on television. The first walk was taken without panic. The first time Emily said, "Mom," naturally, without hesitation. And one morning Rachel made pancakes, heart-shaped, extra syrup, no blueberries. Emily looked down at the plate and laughed through tears. "No blueberries," she said. "Never," Rachel answered. In the end, it was not the biggest clue that solved the case. It was not the broken hair clip, not the witness statement, not the tattoo alone. It was a child's forgotten sentence on an old home video. "The train man says when the bell rings twice, I can go where lost girls live." Those words identified the abductor's environment, the lure location, the fantasy language he used to manipulate her. It was a clue too strange to be invented usefully by adults and too specific to be meaningless once understood. And because Rachel never stopped listening, even to the smallest scraps of her daughter's voice, that sentence became the key that unlocked 19 years of darkness. Some stories hurt because they end in loss. Others hurt because they reveal how close the truth was all along. Emily Dawson had tried to tell the adults around her what was happening, in the language available to a child. A moon tattoo, a man who knew grandma, a train man, a bell that rang twice, a place where lost girls live. She told the truth in fragments, and after 19 years, her mother finally heard the missing piece. That is why this story matters. Because children do not always tell danger in adult language. Because tiny details are sometimes the doorway to everything. Because love, stubborn, grieving, disciplined love, can outlast time. And because somewhere, even now, someone may be holding on to one sentence everyone else dismissed. If they are, may this story remind them. Listen again. Sometimes the smallest clue is the one that brings someone home. If this story touched your heart, comment, keep the porch light on. Because somewhere in the world tonight, there is still a family waiting, still hoping, still searching. And stories like this remind us that miracles can happen, even after 19 years. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful stories like this.